Hello everyone, and welcome back to the ThreeCameramen podcast. Today we will be discussing Fantastic Mr. Fox, the 2009 stop-motion animation by Wes Anderson, based on the Roald Dahl book of the same name. Finley, I understand you've watched this film for the very first time recently. What are your thoughts on the film? Yeah, just speak to me.
Well, you know, I haven't seen a film like that at all, right? And I mean, I thought it was really interesting with the different use of colours they used. Definitely impressive with the stop motion camera, like filming they did with it. You can see how it took 2 years?
I think exactly 2 years, yeah.
I mean, the voice acting I thought was really was really good. And what else was there? The plot of it I thought was really cool. It definitely engaged me from the start. I mean, it was quick, and because I like a movie that engages you straight away, and this movie did it. Because
it's a very short film, isn't it?
I don't know.
It's like 1 hour 20.
Very short film, and they moved house, and then he instantly wanted to go rob the chickens or whatever they had, and I don't know, it just engaged me quite quickly, which I enjoyed. So yeah, I enjoyed the movie. Yeah,
cool. Good movie. And Daniel, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Roald Dahl is quite unique in his style of writing, and I think that definitely suits kind of the style of Wes Anderson and his kind of filming, because you can see throughout the film kind of just the symmetry in every single image, and the fact, what Wes Anderson is especially good at is kind of just the color schemes and stuff. So just kind of, I guess the oranges, the yellows, the browns, stuff like that is they're all kind of representative of autumn.
Yeah, it's quite a warm film. It just obviously with the side and everything.
It kind of represents kind of the fox's habitat and just how they live. So I think that's really clever in how it I think it really accurately reflects what Roald Dahl would have wanted or whatever, for a film adaptation of his book. I
mean, I sort of wish all Roald Dahl adaptations were like this one. I feel like this is the best adaptation that his books have had.
Yeah.
That's better than Willy Wonka, better than the new Witches one, whatever that one was. I think this is
I haven't seen it, but I've heard bad things about it. So.
Okay.
I can't lie. I did get scared about with that movie.
Oh, wait, which one?
I did get scared with that movie. I can't lie.
Which one? Which movie?
The Witches.
Wait, the new one.
There's an older one.
The other one's terrifying. Yeah.
But there have been a lot of Roald Dahl. There have been a lot of Roald Dahl books adapted into films. So you got obviously The Witches. You got the BFG, which I think that was pretty.
The book itself actually has quite a depressing sort of context actually, because apparently when Roald Dahl wrote this, he's just lost his kids to measles, and I think something else happened. I can't remember. But the reason why he wrote this book was have a sort of a strong father figure in the book, which is obviously Mr. Fox, and in the context of his children, that's quite it brings a whole new meaning to the film, I think.
There are differences and similarities in between the book and the film, obviously. So I think in the book it's kind of one father and 4 children, whereas obviously in the film he's only got the one named child, which is Ash. So also that's kind of different. In that kind of portrays more of a strong fatherly figure rather than just more caring, I guess.
But apparently the writers of there was 2 writers of this film, Wes Anderson himself and Noah Baumbach, who directed Marriage Story and Frances Ha. But they changed I think they completely changed the final act of the film because it just didn't suit what they wanted in the film, and it didn't really make movie content. I think in the story, the whole plot line of the Boggis, Bunsen Bean thing, which takes place throughout the entire film, is one section of the book. But they chose I think they found that most interesting, so they've made that the entire film, which I'm kind of glad they did. It made more of a side story.
So
obviously you got Noah Buchanan with kind of Oscar-nominated films like Marriage Story.
Noah Baumbach, not Noah Buchanan.
Oh, Noah Baumbach, yeah. Well.
Marriage Story. I'm sorry, I love Marriage Story so much, but we'll talk about that now.
So with with Wes Anderson's significant filming style of everything being symmetrical and, you know, was it? Is it
distinct style?
Yeah, it is symmetrical.
And it's like he's used to colour and stuff.
Can you see that in this film? Because I think you definitely 100% can.
I mean, I don't want to include this, but Wes Anderson's one of my favorite directors, and his like use of symmetry, I think, is he always achieves that like to the fullest in his animated films. So obviously there's season 2, which is Fantastic Mr. Fox and Isle of Dogs, and those films, I think, they don't really focus.
They're both a very similar style, kind of, with motion.
I feel like out of the two, I do prefer Fantastic Mr. Fox. It has a bit more depth than Isle of Dogs, but Isle of Dogs is still pretty amazing. But I feel like I think his best use of colour he's ever done is in the Grand Budapest Hotel. Like each colour, it's such a crisp film to watch. But and I think colour is definitely used more effectively in Fantastic Mr. Fox with like the whole autumn theme of it. But I feel like it's not much of a focus as it is with his other films.
They definitely. I thought my favourite scene would probably be when he's on the platform and the water's going behind him or to the side of him, and he's talking to Mr. Fox is talking to Mrs. Fox. I thought that was a really cool scene. Just how.
That actually nicely brings on to the stop motion aspect of the film, which I think we touched on briefly.
Yeah. So this is obviously we've only covered one other animated film kind of so far, which will be The Polar Express. So I guess kind of like comparing the two, that's got kind of like an ultra realistic look compared to.
So obviously, as the animals are obviously the character in the film, I think the way they animated like all the fur. Apparently, I might be completely wrong in saying this, but I think the hair on the puppets in the film are real fox hairs. I'm pretty sure, and
so that's just animal abuse.
And also,
so shooting off a fox's tail, do they do that in the film?
Like how they allow
killing
that?
A rat?
For a kids' film, it's very has very heavy themes. I think of like death, violence.
It was.
What those themes are in?
I was literally just listening to it before you interrupted me.
I was very confused because all throughout they're just saying, instead of actually swearing, they just say cuss. I don't get that. Like what?
Yeah.
Why like even include that? Why not just like find alternatives? It just seems a bit weird. It's kind of like trying to be like as adult as possible while staying as a kids' film.
I mean, of course, I don't know how like the kid could like keep up with all the dialogue in the film. It's like there's a lot of like sort of references and like complex words like in the dialogue in the script, which I think I would not be able to pick up at all as a kid. So at the time of its release, there was a lot of sort of debate and sort of criticism about whether this film was more of a kids film or more geared towards adults. And I think, do you guys have like a set opinion on whether you believe this is more kids or adults or whatever, or everyone?
Well, I'll go first. I'll say it's a very clever film because Wes Anderson does something where he manages to appeal to pretty much everyone. So it's got, obviously it's a kids film like PG or whatever, but I'd definitely say it was made for adults just because of kind of the adult themes and stuff, and especially with kind of like it's not got really a happy ending. It's a bit kind of mixed at the end because he hasn't really won. Mr. Fox hasn't got what he wanted, which was to not live in a hole or whatever. Well, I mean, but then it kind of teaches kids about failure, I guess, kind of. And then it's got pretty adult themes for a kids' film, and definitely, I'd say with its contest that year, it was definitely kind of less recognised because of that. Because obviously it was competing with stuff like Monsters vs. Aliens and Up, which also came out in 2009. So, you know.
Say your point now.
I'm just gonna go for simple answer. I thought it was more of a kids movie. I don't know. It's hard to explain how I thought it was a kids movie. It's just that the way Mr. Fox and Mrs. Fox and all that kind of stuff, they spoke it. It was more the whole plot was so simple, because I think that kids are going to watch it and they need to understand the plot. Whereas if you like watch like movies like Fight Club or stuff, or Shutter Island, they have big twists, and kids watching that, they would completely they'll be confused, basically. So I think the whole plot of Fantastic Mr. Fox is definitely for the kids, because although they don't win, or they don't, at the end, I think it's a lot easier to understand.
Yeah. No, I agree. Just to build on Daniel's point that he made earlier, the plot of the film, well, the ending specifically, is not a happy one, because the whole of the film, Mr. Fox is trying to convince himself that he is not an animal, he's like a functioning member of society, and that he wants to prove this by living above the ground, above everyone else, like all his friends and his family and stuff like that. And like you see these sort of animal traits breaking through with his sort of mannerisms, and how he like eats at the start of the breakfast scene. So reality, the ending should be very expected, but it's still quite a sort of sad one, because he's basically back to where he started, but only now he can steal from a supermarket above him, and that's the only benefit he has. But yeah, so I feel like I don't think kids would really be able to grapple with the fact of like, I don't know, they'll like be able to comprehend the sort of existentialism the film holds. But I mean, Daniel, your answer that you said to my question was like quite in the middle. But like, if you had to choose between like the kids and adults, which was the better demographic?
I would say it was ultimately made for adults. The film was just with its kind of mature themes, and just
I'd agree.
Like,
yeah.
Even kind of the directing style, because there's nothing like, obviously it's the first Wes Anderson animated film, but it just has a very unique style. Even like, because I mean, I've got to say, like, Mr. Fox's smile is just creepy at some point.
It is.
And you got like a hypnotic animal that is around. It's just a bit like uncomfortable. So I'd definitely say like all those kind of adults, it's definitely aimed towards adults. But
with other stop motion films, like I'm going to say stop motion, like Coraline, which is another stop motion animated film, which is technically a horror film as well. I remember being really scared of it when I was younger. That has some creepy scenes in it, but it's still geared towards kids. So what apart from the themes and the sort of weird mannerisms each of the animals have, what other elements would you say still are geared towards adults?
I think Coraline also came out in 2009. Same time as Mr. Fox.
Or you could say how the adults, when they keep saying cuss words and stuff, adults can interpret what they actually mean. And what
I would have definitely said the dialogue is a very heavy part of why this is more geared towards adults. I think it's earlier in the podcast. There's a lot of complex sort of words they use and lines of dialogue that are really like descriptive, that it's just would not be able to pick up upon if you were, unless you're like a really smart child, which I wasn't. So I didn't. But.
Yeah, there's still that one key scene near the end where it's just a wolf on the snowy area, and when they will drive by him, and then that's got so many interpretations that it's still not got a clear answer even to this day. So I wondered what your guys' opinions on that was.
Wes Anderson actually said that scene, I think, was basically didn't explain it, but like was the most important scene in the film, and basically explained the entire sort of reason why they made the film. And that very much fits in with what I was saying earlier about how Mr. Fox wants to prove to everyone that he's not just a filthy animal who lives on the ground, but like ultimately he is. That's why he has this sort of unspoken connection to this wolf, who's obviously quite a savage wolf. And I think that's what Anderson's trying to say.
And he also like lives over not underground, so he wants to be like him. I mean, many foxes want to be like wolves or stuff like that. I mean, like they're just the worst version of a wolf. They are
really quite similar animals, yeah.
I think most of the film kind of carries this kind of animalistic or kind of like wild. That's just like Mr. Fox is never kind of fully satisfied because he wants to live kind of a civilized life, but he's always got this kind of thing in the back of his mind, which is like he should be a wild animal. He should like live in holes and stuff. So I think that's pretty interesting.
It is sort of lying to yourself. I think that's one of the biggest sort of messages.
Yeah. He's pretty selfish character overall, to be fair, Mr. Fox, which is pretty different.
It takes him a while to consider how other people would feel. I think that's why partly it's also towards kids. It's sort of teaching them to think about other people's feelings in such situations. Like he does think about Mrs. Fox's sort of opinions or like whatever about when he starts stealing again from and he doesn't think about how his own child would feel if he starts praising like his cousin for the same thing he did, sort of thing. I feel like that's also like a way to sort of teach kids morals and stuff like that.
What do you think the hidden messages are behind this movie? I think you've already mentioned them actually. Yeah,
no, so I think it is just sort of come to terms with your own identity, and you can't change yourself like personality wise or whatever. You're stuck with you, and it's just about how you adapt to that. I think that's what I read.
Yeah, I think even though it's sort of like Mr. Fox lies with himself, it's always about kind of being true to yourself in the end.
That's it.
So you've got kind of like, especially like Mr. Fox's son or whatever, which obviously was changed book, but he's kind of like trying to hit his talent or whatever all throughout the film, and then when he kind of saves his cousin or whatever, then that's kind of the big reveal moment. So I think it's definitely kind of like, because obviously you have to have some sort of like kids moral in it to class it as a kids film. Really, there's not many films that don't have a moral in the end. So I think that's really one of the messages that the film conveys.
Yeah.
It's also something that can teach adults, sort of like, I think that's why it works so well, because the themes and sort of morals of the film apply to both adults and kids. It's a very universal message. I think was formed really well. So yeah, because of that universal theme, it makes sense that Noah, I know I said this earlier, but Noah Baumbach wrote this considering, he wrote Marriage Story and all those other films about family and identity. I think that's quite it's a really cool way to use the medium of animation and sort of cater towards kids to bring out like a sort of stronger message. So the way they recorded the voices for these foxes, was they did it in quite a sort of immersive way, I think. So for example, George Clooney plays Mr. Fox, and for the scene when they are escaping the sort of raid or sort of rebellion thing.
One of the final scenes.
One of the final scenes with when they're on the what's it called, that bike? It's like a motorbike kind of thing with a sidecar.
Yeah, it's just
bike sidecar. To film that part, George Clooney, they recorded George Clooney's lines while he was on like a still quad bike, but it's like the engine revving. Like you saw like Wes Anderson was on the back of the bike with like doing the lines off
one of the other voice actors.
Yeah, and I wanted to know if you guys thought that was a effect in the film. Did you really think it was necessary? But I personally couldn't really tell that it was like that. I thought it was a bit unnecessary, honestly, because I feel like it would have been the exact same regardless of whether they did like went to those lengths or not. So what do you guys think?
I don't know, like you see many other voice actors, and they normally are just doing it in a studio, and then you get they just add sound effects. So the realism of actually being outside on a quad bike sort of gives the element of, it gives a better element than just edited in them sounding like he's on a quad bike, or not a quad bike, but a motorbike. I feel like everything that you do real will come out much better. Like Dan will know, but Christopher Nolan, he does things mainly without CGI.
Yeah.
And it comes out much better, and much more real when you're watching the film. So I feel like when you're doing this and they're actually doing the things that are happening in the film, it makes it a lot more real and seem like, you know, it's not just a cartoon with, you know, a fox.
That's
in my opinion, I think it.
So there's actually a character behind the fox.
Interesting.
I think it does make it. I think it does make a difference, kind of overall, just because of the like realistic approach of it. Because even with just like, because you still got the vibrations from the bike that are affecting their voices, but I think definitely because Wes Anderson's kind of, I think he's probably similar in Nolan to trying to do everything as realistic as possible, just so it turns out well. And I think definitely it does add to that sort of just attention to detail in the film. So even like as mentioned earlier, with like the real fox hair for the puppets, then that was, I think it's just like that level of detail that he goes to just to make these films with small details that people won't even notice. So I think that's just really, really clever and just great directing style.
I will get back to that point you just mentioned. But I feel like I'm thinking about it now, I might have been completely wrong with the whole real fox hair things. But I know for a fact all the human hair in the film is real human hair.
Yeah,
they got from, I think, one of the animation studios they used. I think there might have been some real moral issues if they chose to do real fox hairs on puppets.
Yeah, I still think he's got that attention to detail though with that, just the whole style of his filmmaking.
You know when the humans in the film, did they shape their faces just like the actors, or is it completely?
I don't know, honestly. The only clips I've seen are of Meryl Streep did her lines in the studio, but I've seen George Clooney do his lines like talking on like a yard and like I think Wes Anderson's house and stuff like that. So I don't know if like I don't know. I don't really think I get the whole doing it realistically will have a more realistic effect. But I just think the fact that Meryl Streep did her lines in the studio, I connect to like a difference between the quality of those two like people. I feel like it's a cool sort of idea, but I feel like it just really wasn't that noticeable to like, makes any sort of impact.
I think the main.
If you go deeper into it.
The main human, I think he's called Bunce or whatever, was voiced by Michael Gambon, who has played Dumbledore. So I think, based on what I know what he looks like from Dumbledore, I think they might have been partly based on the actors, but probably not.
Because it was more
Michael Gambon.
The what?
But it was more Michael Gambon played Dumbledore, but he also played Bunce in Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Which one was
I think
Bunce?
it's the main one, the main like clever planning one.
No, he's the one who had the cider, didn't he?
Yeah.
No, it's Bean. Sorry, the Bean's the main one, and the Bean's played by
Yeah.
But then obviously they're mainly based off that nursery rhyme that Owen just sung, and
August months.
Yeah, and then the book as well. It would be more the descriptions from the book.
So I think that about wraps up today's episode. I hope you all enjoyed. Before we go, can I get some final ratings from all of you out of 10? I'll start with Daniel.
Solid 9. It's not a 10 out of 10 for me. It's not just one of my favourite films ever, but because I don't have that kind of connection to it from... genuinely, I've seen it before. I don't have that sort of connection to it, but it's just such a clever film, and the way it kind of appeals to adults as well. Definitely, yeah.
Finley, what about you?
I'm going to give it an 8.5, just like Fight Club. Like Daniel said, it's a very clever film and interesting. It just, I don't know, it's definitely not a 10 for me. I'm more, but I give it an 8.5.
And I would rate it, I think I would have to say a 9.5 out of 10. It's so close to being a 10. It's just, I just can't see it. It's not a perfect film, but I feel like it's 9.5.
You saw it originally, didn't you, in 2009? So
I think I did. I remember seeing like briefly, but I don't remember seeing the entirety of it. I'm being honest.
I remember getting the McDonald's figure of the rat. I played with it for ages, and I never knew what it was from. And then I watched the movie. I was like, oh wait, No
The
way.
rat was such a good character, and then he
That
died.
was a pretty good character.
Oh, well.
Wait,
The rat dies. Spoilers. The rat dies.
Spoilers.
Anyway.
All right.
Alright,
Thanks for watching,
yeah.
and bye.
Leave
thank you.
suggestions in
Bye-bye.
the comments for films.
Leave suggestions,
Right.
yes, for new film. We need ideas. Right.
Subscribe. Thank you.
Subscribe.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Bye.